So imagine this, your everyday WhatsApp chats, your Google Map travel history, or even those lifestyle posts on Instagram could be the very clues that could help authorities catch tax evaders. Here's what's happening. Finance Minister Nirmala has explained how the new income tax bill is turning our digital lives and a digital footprint into tools for tax investigation. Listen in.
Encrypted messages and mobile phones. Unaccounted money to the extent of 250 crores have been detected when the encryption has been decoded. One. Second, evidences which have been seized from WhatsApp messages, particularly crypto assets worth more than 90 crores, and the network of people involved in it have all come out of WhatsApp messages. Now, if the law does not give you the legal backing, in spite of the fact and evidence being in your face, the money is being misused, it is unaccounted money, it becomes tedious. And therefore, the digital element has to be brought in. I'll bring in one more example, sir. WhatsApp communications and incriminating materials found from such conversations helps to unearth the syndicate and identify the end beneficiaries of bogus bills worth 200 crores.
So there you go. Encrypted WhatsApp messages have uncovered a staggering 200 crore rupees in unaccounted money linked to crypto transactions. Yes, even those private chats can betray hidden assets. Then there's Google Maps. Investigators are analyzing travel histories to pinpoint regular trips to secret cash storage locations, places that suddenly become a hotspot for raids when the digital trail is followed and converted into physical trade. And let's not forget social media, Instagram particularly. If you're flaunting an extravagant lifestyle on Instagram, you might inadvertently raise red flags. Authorities have been using social media clues to spot properties held in someone else's name, often a sign of Benami transactions meant to hide wealth. Not just that, emails and business software audits have played a role covering undisclosed transactions hidden deep in company records and communications. Now, are the use of these platforms by the government even legal? The answer is yes, because under the new Income Tax Bill 2025, while the law also allows physical searches of tangible assets, which was always the definition of a raid, it has now been expanded to cover the digital world as well. Now, what does that mean? All your virtual assets like cryptocurrencies, digital tokens, and other cryptographic forms of value are now under the taxman's radar. Now, critics may worry that this might infringe on personal privacy under Article 21, which protects life and liberty. But the government's stand is very clear. You just heard Nirmala Sitharaman say that, and I will repeat. We need modern laws for a modern economy. After all, much of our financial life is digital now. When was the last time you actually had to go to a bank to get a transaction done? You did it on your phone. And tax evaders thus have long used online methods to hide their money. In fact, emails, direct messages, and other direct communications can provide that smoking gun evidence that the authorities have been looking for. So what does this mean for you and I? For individuals, it's a call to ensure complete transparency in your digital transactions, especially if you're trading crypto or managing offshore accounts. For businesses, keeping clear digital records is now more important than ever. And for digital platforms, there might soon be new rules requiring them to store and even provide access to encrypted data when asked by authorities. In short, our digital footprints are more powerful than ever. Remember that every click and swipe could be part of a much larger picture when it comes to financial transparency. Let me now quickly go across to my guest who are joining us to try and decode what this means. Is this a license to snoop or a necessary evil? I am being joined by Pawan Duggal, who's one of India's foremost cybersecurity expert, but I'm also being joined by two very astute political analysts here, Manish Barriar joining us as well, and with me in the studio is Tehseen Poonawalla. Tehseen, let me start with you first. This was a concern that came to light about 2 weeks ago. We had done a show on the Urban Debate as well on this, about how the provisions within the income tax bill are problematic, give people a license to snoop. Today, we've heard that even before this bill becomes a law, there is a precedent which has been set as to how WhatsApp conversations became critical to get about 200 crores of fraudulent conversations through cryptocurrencies, fraudulent transactions through cryptocurrency. Does that, in your mind this ameliorate the questions or at least give you some sort of an assurance about the concerns as to why these provisions within the new income tax bill were required?
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on the show. At the onset, let me start with what is traditional finance ministry speeches and come to the digital era. I have never in my life, and I'm an entrepreneur, seen a government that indulges in more tax terrorism than this present government. This government is indulging in absolute tax terrorism. And the data shows it, which is why most high net worth individuals, the most number of millionaires in dollar terms, Indians have left the country. The biggest reason is tax terrorism. The basic idea of this bill, which is draconian, is every Indian is a chore. And Nirmala Tai and her ministry have now the moral duty of snooping into everybody's WhatsApps and emails to check who's not a chore. That's not how governments function. You have to have legitimate reason to believe that somebody's doing something wrong. This bill gives no protection to anybody. In the earlier instances of, say, you want to the income tax wants to investigate somebody, say me or you or anybody else on this platform, there were permissions. This completely bypasses that. Before I come to the technological challenges, just look at the lack of common sense that the finance ministry, which is filled with babus, and the first thing I will do when I come to power is cut 50% babus, what the Argentinian president did, because babus are destroying this country and this government. Look, they say, oh, we track digital currency down. Digital currency and crypto is the only thing that can anyways be tracked. It has a digital footprint. True. So all you make it is legal, and you have like a SEBI kind of a regulatory mechanism, and it'll anyways be tracked. You don't need to go to draconian ways. Everything is anyways on a blockchain. But you have no rules for blockchain and for digital currency because you take tax on it, but you're calling it illegal. That's the hypocrisy and the lack of awareness of this government. Now let's come to the issue at hand. Let's say WhatsApp, that they want to now look at your WhatsApp. What does that mean in simple terms? Of course, Pawan is here. End-to-end subscription, end-to-end chat, encryption, right? So they'll have to have a third-party backdoor entry. Doesn't that leave it open to hacking, to viruses coming in, to your WhatsApp data going to the government? And the data protection in India. Don't even believe me. Just ask the viewers of Mirror now how many unsolicited calls you get with all your data going everywhere. Every real estate person from Gurugram to Noida to Bangalore is calling you, telling you what you want to buy. Your data protection, you anyways know how great it is in this country and how it's enforced. So this is the government that is actually going to be playing with data with a third-party encryption, backdoor entry, and making us all vulnerable. All they can do is make crypto legal, have a regulatory mechanism, and you'll have the solutions to your problem.
So you're saying the government has essentially thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Instead of having better rules to just look at crypto and monitor it and legalize it, they've come up with a system which opens every form of transaction up to e-surveillance.
Yes.
And therefore allows snooping at a much more problematic level.
At a mass level, assuming every Indian is a thief until the Indian proves himself or herself innocent.
Manish Barriar, would you agree with that assessment? If not, why?
Of course not. Good evening to you and my co-panelists and all the viewers. I'm, obviously, Tehseen ji is pretty powerful when he speaks and very believable also. But let me give you some data and you will understand why the government has to do this. First of all, if you look at the track record of this government from 2014 to 2024-25, you will find that the maximum number of reforms in terms of ensuring that the honest taxpayer doesn't get hassled has been done by this government and utilizing technology. So you have faceless, assessment and stuff like that. We all know that there was a time where people used to really shudder from income tax. No more. So I would strongly rebut this tax terrorism. It's gone, right? If at all people now fear it is GST and not income tax. So, it proves that as far as income tax is concerned, for the right-minded individual, the right taxpayer, people like you have nothing to worry. But obviously, criminals have to be worried. Now, let me give you another data. When this government came in 2014, will you believe this? In 2014, only around 50 to 60,000 people used to pay taxes in this country, which is more than 10 lakhs. And now also in 2025, only 1.3 lakh people will pay more than 10 lakh taxes. That means you are saying that in India, only 1.6 lakh people are there who have a salary of more than 30 lakhs. Isn't a travesty of justice as well as tax-paying nation? Like if India has to move ahead, now you know how many cars, how many how many houses of more than crores and crores are there in this country. Imagine only 1.6 lakhs. This is a country where the employee like you will pay more taxes and your owners are going to pay less taxes. This is what is happening in our country. Now let's take up what's happening in
This
US,
is perhaps
in
what was
Canada.
being meant by
Just one
this
second.
is what
I'll
perhaps
take
is
10
meant with the
seconds more.
charge tax terrorism, Manish, that
Yeah.
we
10
already
seconds
pay
more.
an inordinately
Ritangshu, 10
a
seconds
large
more.
amount of taxes. However,
10
I will
seconds
say
more.
that I will
10
say
seconds
that
more.
that's
I'll
not
just
the
complete.
focus of this debate. Whether we are paying
No,
too
no.
many taxes or
One
not,
more,
that's not the focus of this
one more
debate.
part. Ritangshuji, one more part.
Let's keep that on the side. Go ahead.
So I would just like to complete with one more sentence. You look at US, you look at Canada, you look at South Korea, you look at European Union. Everywhere, the point which you were raising in terms of digital access is given. You can check this out, right? Everywhere it is there. What's wrong in India, right? As far as honest taxpayers are concerned, you have nothing to worry. So it's not that.
Manish, I mean, you are entering into tricky waters, and once again, you know that I do my research here. We have a list of global guidelines, especially when it comes to these cases. Since you mentioned it, I'll just pull them out. In the United States, the IRS, which is the Revenue Service, needs a court warrant to access personal digital data. In the UK, the HMRC can digital search, but they are under the strictest data privacy laws. Mr. Duggal will attest to that. In Australia, the ATO requires court approval to access personal data. In Canada, the CRA cannot seize any personal emails without a warrant. The point is, yes, maybe they have the provision to do it, but they're under very strict laws and they need to get a warrant. The problem is the provisions under, and let me get in Mr. Duggal at this point.
Just one
let
second.
me get in Mr. Duggal. He's probably the best arbitrator.
No, I need to get back on that. When you mentioned about US, they are able to track digital footprints in tax fraud cases and it is allowed. So humbly, I would differ on that. I think there is a difference opinion on that. I did my research too.
But they're regulated.
But it's regulated.
Mr. Barriar, they're regulated. That's the point. The problem with this income tax bill, and perhaps Mr. Duggal come in at this point. I think the problem with this income tax bill's provisions is that they do not require a warrant to allow an income tax official to do a e-chapa on your social media or on your tax profiles. By all means, I think we'll all agree, even Tehseen will agree here, that in a current digital economy, you need to equip the government or the tax agency with the tools to try and track down an absconder, this thing. But to decide who's an absconder, there's always a process in which there is a warrant which is issued. Right now, that check and balance is not there in the income tax bill.
To come up with some provisions without any checks and balances. I said, if you are going to come up with some provisions without any checks and balances, be rest assured that's going to be abused to the maximum extent possible. Now, in a scenario when India is moving towards a $5 trillion economy and India has become one of the biggest e-markets in the world, the fact of the matter is that the objective behind the bill is very noble, laudable. The problem is with these provisions, you're effectively nullifying whatever the effect is going to be of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023. You'll be nullifying all the relevant freedoms which are given under the Constitution and also under the Information Technology Act 2000. Yes, if there is adequate checks and balances to say, hold on, there's either an order from a court or some documented procedure to be followed, then yours going after some digital records is fine. But if these powers are going to come as they are, then the potentiality of just these being used for the purposes of fishing out new potential people who could be targeted for tax investigation is going to be very high, which will be a direct violation of your fundamental right to privacy under Article 21 of the Constitution. Mind you, your fundamental right to privacy is not absolute and can be taken away in accordance with procedure established by law. And therefore, this particular bill, if it's passed, will become procedure established by law. But the fundamental question will it be constitutional? Does it fulfill the minimum parameters of constitutional protection that has been stipulated by the Supreme Court from time to time? That will only have to be decided by judicial review, by either the High Courts or the Supreme Court. But having said that, once people get to know about this, there's going to be massive fear. There'll be a fear psychosis, because whether you are, shall I say, on the wrong or on the right, the potentiality of a digital intrusion into your records and potentially being exposed to harassment could itself open up new doors for new potential corruption, for potentially violating or trammeling upon the constitutional freedoms of people at large. So I think the Parliament would be well advised to have a look from a holistic standpoint that while the intentions are correct, you should not come up with provisions that will ultimately be open to far more misuse and which could potentially even be nullifying some of the constitutional rights that have been guaranteed by the living Constitution of India. But at the same time, by all means go after people who are on the wrong side of the law, but please, under the garb of these provisions, genuine, bona fide digital users having access to their digital privacy, data privacy, ought not to be harassed, hounded, or targeted under the garb of this so-called stuff. So this effectively means that people's perception that you are sending end-to-end encryption on WhatsApp or other platforms is no longer a protection, because the government in any case will go ahead and decrypt the same, notwithstanding what the service provider is telling you, that lo and behold, I do not have access to what's information. So please, we have to realize technology is moving very fast, quantum computing is coming in, more decryption methodologies are coming in, so we will have to have a more balanced approach between ensuring that the nation and the sovereign interests are adequately safeguarded, while on the same hand also ensuring that the legal provisions are not misused.
Okay, let me flip this argument on its head. Let me try playing a devil's advocate here. The existing 1961 Act, Tehseen, also gives an income tax official sweeping powers to conduct raids, with a warrant and all those things, conduct raids and have more or less have the way. Yet every time, if I have to go tomorrow and buy a Mercedes-Benz, I don't have the fear of an income tax official landing at my doorstep here to check whether I have really got that car out of my hard-earned money or have I got it from black money. So why is it this case that necessarily when it comes to shifting those powers to a digital sphere, we are worried about, okay, the next time if I go to the Maldives, I'll have some income tax official going through my Instagram to say that, okay, can you really afford a trip to Maldives or not? At the end of the day, these powers are meant to be used in exceptional purposes, and I'm sure the government doesn't have the time to track all of our social media accounts to see who's actually spending more money or who seems to have more disproportionate assets. So maybe these concerns are unjustified.
No, they're absolutely justified. Because if they have limited resources, the fear that they could go after people they absolutely don't like, political opponents, dissenters, people who are people like Pawan or me Pawan's a reasonable person, I'm a critic of the government. They could do anything with that. So yes, with reasonable resources, they could go after people they don't like. That's the first fear. And it'll have a chilling effect on freedom of speech, chilling effect on right to privacy, which, by the way, is under Article 21, right to life, which is the mother of all fundamental rights. But now let's come to a larger issue that's at hand. And there are two things at play here. The 1961 Act, while it does mandate permission to still raid you, the raiding officer has to give in writing why he believes the person who is raided had to be raided. Here, you're just snooping to somebody's picture. So let's assume you're going through my pictures in Maldives. You're looking at all the places I'm holidaying and with who I'm holidaying. And why should an income tax officer be looking at that when he has no reasonable grounds to believe that I have done something wrong? Number three, the thing that Manish spoke about, look, there is no fear of income tax officials. Let's ask the mirror now officials. Corruption in income tax has actually gone up because by making the IRS officer faceless, one, the bona fide businessman who has a dynamic business cannot explain the differences in tax. You have nobody to talk to. It's so digital that a human connection is lost. But number two, the practical part about it is because your cases are now so far away, you now are being the calls that come from CAs in a different part of the state saying, here's your case, we'll set it up. So actually corruption has gone up, which nobody's talking about. One more thing. The biggest problem today in India is GST extortion. And the GST extortion with the crazy rates that's happening. Today, a simple person like you or I, and you're an honest tax-paying person, you get your taxes cut. For you to spend 100 rupees, somebody like you has to earn 140, 150 rupees. That is where the tax terrorism is coming. That is not being addressed by this particular bill.
Let me then touch upon the first 2 points which you mentioned, Tehseen, out of the 4. Manish, comment on that. The point number 2, which Tehseen mentioned, is something which even Mr. Dugal mentioned. The point is the big difference between the 1961 Act and the current bill which has been proposed is that there's no supervision of a judicial level at this point in terms of a magistrate, in terms of giving a warrant. So nothing stops an IT official from going ahead and targeting at people at an arbitrary basis. Now the next logic point will come is, why should an IRT official do that on an arbitrary basis? We have already seen the overreaction. I don't have to come up with hypothetical examples of Tehseen or Mr. Dugal or even myself. We have seen the overreaction coming in from Kunal Kamra, in which the state MOS for home comes out and states that Kunal Kamra's bank accounts are going to be examined, Kunal Kamra's call records are going to be intercepted to see whether there's a mastermind behind it. The concern is that any critic of the government or any critic of the establishment, whichever establishment is in power, can be at the receiving end of this massively draconian power which is vested with the income tax department from this bill.
First, I would again come back to when you refuted my claim in terms of, and I'll, about other countries. In UK, AI and web scraping is analyzed, and they analyze social media for signs of undeclared income, lavish lifestyles, undisclosed businesses. See, I think we need to look at it in context. Normal people, middle class people, upper middle class people, even rich people who are honest taxpayers, they are not to be worried. This government has already said earlier, right? Now, you need to give me examples of harassment. People, it's a bogey. Now, I personally feel, it's my own personal opinion, and I keep talking to cross-section of people. I think while we accept free speech, we talk about free speech.
But should critics of the Modi government be worried, Manish?
When it comes to
apolitical people may not be worried, but should critics of the Modi government be worried?
When it comes to property in public life, I think we talk about fear-mongering. There's nothing to fear as far as honest taxpayers are concerned. But then people who hide money, they lead absolutely wonderful lifestyle, corrupt government officers, businessmen who are corrupt, right? But then we all want honest politicians, honest government babus, everyone we want honest, but we don't want to be honest, right? That is where this entire bogey is all about. Why this hypocrisy? I don't understand. If anybody doesn't have ill-gotten wealth, you cannot take it out, but then it comes out. I gave you the data. We are...
Manish, you're not answering. Manish, I'm sorry to cut you short, but you're skirting my point. It's not... I'm asking this for the third time. It's not about whether I'm honest or not. The problem is it doesn't take a government a lot of time to declare me dishonest and use that pretext to investigate through my social media, just like it doesn't take a government time to miraculously find some illegal encroachment in the property of someone who has been accused of doing something wrong and immediately get that demolished very conveniently within 24 hours. The question is not about whether the people are honest or not. The question is about whether this law will be misused against people who have criticized or critical of the establishment.
So again, you are coming to very specific issue in a country of 150, 160 crore. One or two incidents which are incorrect cannot be used as an example to actually spread fear and bogey on something which is very, very well intentioned. That is what my point is. Just because one or two bad examples, we cannot say that this rule is incorrect or something which is... Now, show me examples. That's what I'm saying. You show me an example of any person who has had honest taxpayer has actually been harassed. Because this harassment is something which is a very elitist mindset, let me tell you. It only floats in the upper echelons of society. And that's what they are, intelligentsia. So they talk, they write, right? And that's why this entire thing is there. But what we are talking right now is, if you look at middle class, lower middle class people, even upper middle class who are paying taxes, they are completely very well, accepting all these laws, and there is no problem. And why do we really question the wisdom of this parliament itself? Right? This bill has come. I'm sure the leader of opposition, if he feels that this is incorrect, he's going to really come out strongly against it. So you also have to really, trust the wisdom of the opposition and all these parliamentarians. Why do we jump the gun? Jump the ship? So I'm saying that...
you wanted to make a point before I go to Mr. Dugal.
The points that you're making.
I mean, yes, we are going to wait, and we are going to wait for this to come up in Parliament. It's still a bill, it's not an act, so we want to see what debates happen on it. But it's also a job to try and debate and analyze bills before they come and before they're passed and made into law. Tehseen, you want to answer Manish Barriar about whether examples of whether people have been harassed, honest taxpayers have been harassed?
The highest number of high net worth individuals even those who are millionaires in dollar terms, have left this great nation of ours in the last 10 years. The highest number of Indians, high network individuals, have given up their passports in the last 10 years. That data is irrefutable. And most of them are going to countries, are leaving India because of the tax reason. Now, India must have simplified tax laws and simplified GST laws. That simply doesn't happen. And the laws are made in such a way that the government can use those laws
That
to
is a
harass
criticism
you.
which won't apply here because this is a bill which has been brought in to simplify the Tax Act.
Except that it doesn't, because even the 12 lakh non-tax, I don't want to get into that, is so complicated that the babus in that ministry want to complicate everything that's there, including the IT provisions.
Okay.
But may I make another point? Look, the problem with this bill is it's a finance bill. So it anyways won't go through Rajya Sabha. It'll get passed. It'll only be debated in Rajya Sabha. Lok Sabha will pass it, where they have the tyranny of the numbers. And the tyranny of the numbers is what this government is going to push through. So this will obviously be struck down in the Supreme Court. I will challenge this in the Supreme Court. It will be struck down and it'll be immediately struck down because the judges will be snooped with this bill. Judges' data will be with the government. I'm saying this on record. The data of judges will be with the government.
Okay.
And some of them do deserve, considering what has been burning.
Okay, we are getting into a lot of very contentious issues at this point. I don't want anyone to have a reason to now snoop on my Instagram profile. Not that I have a lot of things going on. But anyway, Mr. Duggal, all jokes aside, for the last point. No, Manish, I just want to get in Mr. Duggal at this point, and maybe I'll come to you for the last word after that. Mr. Duggal, as you mentioned in your previous comments as well, ultimately, given the fact that if this bill is probably going to become an act due to the numbers the government enjoys, will it then come down to a legal test? And we have a precedent. When the Supreme Court had its Aadhaar verdict in 2017, it said the right to privacy under Article 21 is sacrosanct. Any intrusion by the state must pass the test of legality, necessity, and proportionality. I know you're not a lawyer, Mr. Duggal, but according to you, do the provisions of this bill pass the test of legality, of necessity, and of proportionality?
Well, we'll have to wait and watch what will be the final text that's going to be passed by Parliament. But yes, the principles laid down in Justice Puttasamy's case will be directly. The Supreme Court is going to look at the fact as to whether this bill is coming up with these particular tests of proportionality, rationality, and other things. But the fact remains is, at the end of the day, we'll have to have a balanced approach. Are you trying to come up with something that's you're trying to kill an ant by using a huge kind of ammunition or mortar? That may not be required. We'll have to come up with more innovative, customized solutions so that we can go after the people who are evading the tax, at the same time give a sigh of relief, confidence and assurance to the people at large that, look, please be rest assured, the taxman is not here to surveil upon you as a big brother. The taxman will not have access to your private records, and that there'll be only certain limited circumstances which will require judicial scrutiny, judicial review before these things can be done. And now the question is, the fundamental question, if Indians believe that their encrypted services are absolutely secure, then think again. The government will now have the power to decrypt your encrypted information, and whatever information comes out from that will be valid electronic evidence on the basis of which appropriate prosecutions under the income tax and the criminal laws, including the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, are likely to follow. So it's better that people take note of these developments. Let's wait for the law to come up. If it's not up to the mark, people will go and challenge it. But in any case, for all stakeholders, it's much better that you be on the right side of the law. Do not go ahead and contravene the law, lest you get exposed to more exposure and more potential harassment by potential abuse or misuse of
I
these
think there are
very
two
wide-ranging
dimensions
powers
to this debate.
which
One is, of
currently
course, the issue of
require
data
far more checks
privacy.
and balances.
And I think we have had several discussions with Mr. Duggal that the data privacy situation in this country is an absolute nightmare. And that is a hydra that needs to be fought with on an equal number of various fields. When it comes to taxation, I think no government has done more to change the system of taxation than the last few years we have seen in terms of the sheer number of changes and reforms that have come in. Whether they have worked or not at first go, that remains to be seen. But at least there has been an attempt to simplify. We hope that these concerns are raised in Parliament before it goes in, and there's no test of tyranny which goes in. We all agree that a new income tax bill is required and needs to be armed with teeth when it comes to dealing with technological defaulters, but it should not be misused. I think on that note, thank you so much, Manish. Thank you so much, Tehseen, and thank you so much, Mr. Dugal, for joining us on this important discussion. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.